Every choice has a consequence. On October 2nd, 1995, I took 23 physical steps. That was leaving a car that I was transported in and walking into what would become my new home. As I took those steps, I thought about my wife. I thought about my two children, Rob and Alex. Oh, they were just little tykes at the time. I thought about my career. At that point, I was tax partner in a CPA firm. I had testified before Congress on various aspects of federal tax law, written articles in national magazines. I taught continuing professional education courses in 30 states. I was Chuck Gallagher. I was a somebody. I thought about the church where I had been music director for 12 years. I literally thought about everything that defined my life. But as I took those 23 steps, on the 24th step, I reached out my hand, I pushed open the door, and I stepped in to federal prison. On that day, I became 11-6-42-058, an inmate, what most people would define as a nobody. You see, every choice has a consequence. Now, the last live trip that I did when I was doing an ethics training program, in that program, when I walked in and just repeated to the audience exactly what I said to you, I came in looking a little different. I was actually in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. You probably can imagine that, well, that created a little bit of dis-ease within the audience because they weren't sure what in the world was taking place when they were supposed to be in an ethics class, which, by the way, for most people is supposed to be boring. But gosh, I didn't want to make it boring. But I will never forget that day. Now, this is pre-COVID-19 because, of course, I'm coming to you virtually because we aren't having live events right now. So part of the challenge as we move through this program is to make sure that what I present to you is valuable and is meaningful, but also can be a little entertaining. So I'm going to go back to when I was actually going through TSA security. I'll never forget it because, of course, you have to take out your license and you have to have your boarding pass. And so I got up to the TSA agent, and in the process of doing that, he looks at me and he says, okay, move forward, and I do, putting my carry-on bags on the line so it can go through scanning. Now, I generally don't believe in checking bags, especially when there's the possibility they could get lost. So effectively what I did was I carried my orange jumpsuit and handcuffs with me. So here it is. It's going through airport security. The TSA agent is sitting there looking at it as it moves past, and they see handcuffs. TSA agent looks at me. He said, "Are you law enforcement?" Now, obviously, I was not law enforcement, although I'd like to have said I was. I mean, if you work for the IRS, if you work for Homeland Security, CIA, FBI, you would have a beautiful gold badge, and that would be kind of fun. But if I said that, it would have been impersonating an officer subject to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine, and having been to prison once, I did not want to try that again. So something came over me at that moment when he said, "Are you law enforcement?" And that just devilment of my quirky personality kicked in, and I said, "No, I'm a pervert." At which point in time, he then looked at me, God is my witness, he winks. So it taught me a valuable lesson, and that lesson is, it's probably not good to mess with the TSA agents, especially when the outcome is something that's somewhat unexpected. Now, all of that said, you might be asking yourself a fair question. Why would someone who is a convicted felon be actually asked to do a program and help us understand ethical behavior? My response to that is, well, who else is better? Because one thing I know from personal experience is this: smart, intelligent people can make dumb, stupid choices. It's easy. And you see, it's not the question of what should we do or should we not do, or what does our code of ethics say we're supposed to do, but the question is, what motivates really smart people to do dumb things? And that's what we're going to spend some time talking about here today. You see, the way I look at it is, the best defense is a good offense. And the key to effective ethical leadership is to understand what motivates ethical or unethical human behavior, and then to take action. So, as we move through the process today of this course, we're going to look at what motivates that behavior and the actions that you can take to, well, let's put it this way, help keep people between the ethical lines. Now, let me ask you a few questions, okay? And before we get into the questions, I want to give you a number and let you know virtually how we're going to conduct this survey, okay? So, first, if you will, wherever you are, write down this number, 828-244-1400. That's 828-244-1400. Yes, that's 828-244-1400. Operators are standing by. Actually, that's not really true. That is my cell phone number, but the easiest way when we're in an environment of Zoom to be able to conduct a survey is to do that via text. Now, don't be uncomfortable with this. You're not on any list. It's just a simple yes or no in many cases, or answers to that number. So keep the number handy because we'll use it from time to time. So get your phone out. Here's question number one. How many of you would voluntarily choose to make an unethical choice? Let me repeat the question, if you will. Go to your phone, 828-244-1400. Yes or no? That's all I'm looking for. I expect my phone to blow up here in a second, but yes or no, hit me with your best shot. How many of you would voluntarily choose to make an unethical choice? Now, let me wait for just a second and let the text come rolling in. Okay, so the phone is blowing up, and let me look down through here. Okay. Pretty much what I expected. Okay, so for those of you that are willing to play ball here, most of you, how many of you would voluntarily choose to make an unethical choice? Now, this is not scientific, but of those of you who are willing to respond, here's what I'm getting. Maybe depending upon what it is, no, 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 yes, yes. I like that. Maybe, no, 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 and there's another one, maybe. Okay, I think I prompted you on that one perhaps. Okay, so let's go to question number 2. Same cell phone number, okay, same text number. Here's the question. How many of you feel that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? Again, 828-244-1400. Text me your response. But how many of you feel that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? I mean, think about it. You go to the convenience store to get gas, go inside, which is one of the few places you can go inside now with COVID-19 ravaging the country, and someone is robbing the store. That's voluntarily breaking the law. How many of you feel that voluntarily breaking the, okay, my phone is blowing up. How many of you feel that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? I'm going to give you just a minute. This one's catching some interesting things. No. Depends upon what law. I do it every day. Okay, that's, you know, the funny part about being virtual is whenever all you're doing is texting and I have no idea who you are, you can be blatantly honest. This is really kind of cool. No. Well, it is. How many people think voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? Yes. Yes, it's unethical. Yes. Yeah, most of the time, yes. Okay, so far the majority of what I'm getting, wait a minute, there's a few more. Yes, depends on the law. Yes. Okay, so it's generally moving either it depends on the law we're talking about, or the answer is yes, it's unethical. Okay, all right, so let's go to question number 3. Question number 3. How many of you have driven on the interstate highways in the last 2 weeks? Now, if you've texted me before, that means you don't have to type the number in. Okay. Yes. Okay, there's, I like that. A smiley face. Okay, so somebody has an idea of what the next question is. Yes. I haven't been out much because of COVID-19. Okay, fair enough. I get this. Yes. Couple more smiley faces. All right, so for those of you that are psychic, let's go to question number 4. Question number 4 is, and how many of you have exceeded the speed limit by 5 to 10? And I'm getting lots of smiley faces, a lot of yeses. Doesn't look like quite as many responses as in the first two. Okay, now they're coming. More smiley faces. Stupid question. Everyone speeds. Okay, really? All right. So I've gone through these questions, so let's think about this for just a second because I'm going to kind of recap. Okay? How many of you would voluntarily choose to make an unethical choice? Most people's response on the text that I've gotten was, no, I would not voluntarily choose to make an unethical choice. The second question, which kind of carries us back to this whole idea of what's ethical and is ethical only about the law. Second question was, well, do you think that voluntarily breaking the law is unethical? And most people's response was yes. There were some exceptions because some of you are pretty sharp. You wonder, well, what's the law? So we decided, let's go down the road of speeding. Have you driven on the interstate highways? Well, the answer to that for most of us is yes. Over the past 2 weeks, I have. But then the question is, how many of you have sped during that time? 5 to 10 over. And the answer was, well, most everybody. At least those of you that are willing to play along and to text and to give me answers virtually this way. So think about it for just a second, because functionally we all say, well, yeah, we've driven on the interstate highways, but then secondarily, we're apt to speed. And here's the thing, and this is critically important as we move forward. You see, it is easy to make unethical choices when they seem socially acceptable. As we move forward, take a look at the slide because our intentions create our behavior. Let me say that again. Our intentions create our behavior. On an individual level, for all of us who are on this call, the intentions that we have create the behavior that follows. Now, at a company level, at a corporate level, our culture creates the systems that follow. Let me say that again. The culture of the organization creates the systems that follow. Now, let me give you 2 quick examples. From an intention behavior perspective, let's go back, and this goes back a number of years, when we had sports and when we had football, to Ray Rice. Y'all remember Ray Rice, Baltimore Ravens, up-and-comer, made a lot of money. I mean, he was very well recognized. Was engaged, in fact. But he and his fiancée, he and his lovely fiancée were at an event someplace together, and somewhere along the line, as happens in human behavior, they got into an argument. Now, keep in mind, if you get into an argument, if something happens, and I mean tempers start to boil up, here they were out at dinner, and this argument was starting to really fester and boil up. But if you're sitting there at dinner with each other, you are clearly not going to just go crazy in the restaurant. So they were angry, but they kept their cool. And they left the restaurant, and they began to stroll across the median area going to their hotel. Now, here they are in public, and occasionally people would look and, oh, that's Ray Rice. Wow, oh wow. And you'd have some paparazzi that would snap a picture. So clearly, even though you're angry with each other, you got to be kind of cool. You wave a little bit and just move this on. Jeez. And they get into the hotel and they walk through the lobby of the hotel, and again, people are kind of recognizing them. They're just trying to find a place of safety because they're really not happy. They push the door to the elevator opens, no one inside, they step in and it closes and they're alone. First time they've been alone, and they're hot. Oh my goodness. And the eruption that took place in that elevator. She was up in his face. She was letting him know exactly what he thought. He was letting her know what he thought. She got to the place, I mean, the words were flying, and finally she spit at him. Now, intentions create behavior. Now, let me make sure I'm crystal clear with this. I do not in any way condone what Ray Rice did. I want to say that categorically. I do not condone what he did. But I could hear in his head, would you just shut up? And with that, the right hook caught her in the jaw and knocked her out cold. Bam! There she is on the elevator floor. And of course, there's that moment of, holy crap, what did I just do? And the elevator door opens. And here are people looking at this big guy with this girl on the floor, to which, of course, he grabs her and says, she's had too much to drink. Girl can't hold her liquor, picks her up easily enough for him, starts to walk her out of the elevator and hopes and prays nothing bad's going to happen. Here's a note. Note to self. In every elevator, there's a camera. The camera is always recording what's taking place in the elevator. So guess what? When you've been in an elevator and you might have copped a kiss or copped a feel or scratched someplace that you didn't want people to see, guess what? Somebody's seen that. So somewhere along the line, somebody that reviews elevator tapes, I'm guessing they worked in West Virginia, but I could be wrong, but somebody that reviewed elevator tapes are sitting there watching the tape and said, hey, I bet that's old Ray Rice right yonder. Good golly, he done knocked her out. I bet TMZ'd pay $1,000 to see that. And the next thing you know, the tape from the elevator is sold to TMZ. TMZ has it all over the media. Ray Rice, by the way, no longer plays for the Baltimore Ravens. In fact, he doesn't play for the NFL. He is now the poster child for domestic abuse. Do you think he intended that day? I don't think so. Intentions create behavior. Intentions somehow can flash like a match when something changes in life. Now, for where we go, we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about intentions and behavior. So, at this point, we're going to look at individual intentions and the behavior that follows, because as important as culture is and systems are important, the reality is our intentions drive our individual behavior, and individuals are the people who, in the truth of things, will make ethical or unethical choices. Intentions create behavior. Now, you'll notice on the screen it says problem area, blind spots. So, we've talked about social acceptability. Let's look at blind spots. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I just want you to think about, these folks that you might see on the screen. In fact, let me ask you this first question. Who is this person? Now, keep in mind, I was born, by the way, in Maryland, so there is a fair chance that some of you aren't going to have a familiarity with this individual, but I now live in South Carolina, and that is former Governor Mark Sanford. Now, some of you might remember years back the story. Here it is, we're in South Carolina, and sometimes we just have weird questions. Like someone picked up the telephone, called our state capitol in Columbia and said, "What is our governor doing today?" Well, the answer that came back on the other end of the phone was, well, he's been so busy governing that he's taken some time to hike on the Appalachian Trail so that he could clear his mind. Well, we wondered, wonder where he is on the Appalachian Trail. And with that question came some stammering, only for us to eventually find out in our fair state that our governor had not been on the Appalachian Trail clearing his mind. He had in fact hopped a private flight to Argentina where he had a mistress. Now, I would venture to say that most of us in this program today would say, oh my goodness, that's probably not the ethical thing for the governor of South Carolina to do. Oh, by the way, while he is dutifully married. Now, we in South Carolina are kind-hearted people. We knew his wife had all the money and she was going to divorce him. And that began to explain to us why, in fact, he was taking salsa lessons. Because the song, or the dance rather, in South Carolina is the shag. By the way, you don't ask an English person want to shag because that will get you slapped. But in South Carolina, that's a lovely invitation to dance. So Mark Sanford continued to be our governor until the end of his term. We in fact thought about changing the state song to Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. Okay, I'm really kidding about that, but we may as well have some fun if we've got to be here together and talk about ethics. But just in case you said, well, my golly, you're picking on a Southern Republican, I thought, let's pick on a Southern Democrat. Except this one's from North Carolina. Now, probably a lot of you know that face, John Edwards. Oh, yes. If you go back, 12 years or so, to 2008, the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. 3 people running. That was in the days when you didn't have 17 people running for president. It was John Edwards, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. And at the beginning, John Edwards, he had a nice little commanding lead. People looked at him and said, oh my gosh, every hair is in place. He is so articulate and has a certain Southern accent about him. Why? He might be the next John F. Kennedy. But now, okay, so let's just take a quick time out. If you're running for President of the United States, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to hire a videographer. That person is going to be with you every waking moment. They're going to be capturing video of your campaign events and what's taking place as you trek to become President of the United States. Why do they do that? Well, if you win the presidency, you're clearly going to have your presidential library. And if you have a presidential library, let's be honest, most people don't read books these days. Or if they do, it's electronic. But more and more people would like to see what's happening in full live color, in full video. So that's the need for the videographer. Well, John took a kind of liking to his videographer. In fact, he took more than a liking to her. He impregnated her while his wife was fighting breast cancer. Not exactly the most ethical choice. And then, well, just in case you think I'm picking on politicians, oh no, let's not do that. What about Martha Stewart? Martha Stewart, who has a massive empire, who has a line of clothing for dogs at Pets R Us or whatever it is. Martha Stewart. Now, why was Martha Stewart convicted? Many people would say, I know, insider trading. Not insider trading. Martha Stewart was convicted because while she was being investigated for insider trading, she lied. And lying to federal authorities will end you up in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. You see, all of these things are blind spots. So think about it. Former governor of South Carolina was in a blind spot. He thought, who's going to know? Nobody's going to know. Or John Edwards, I'm in a blind spot. I'm running for president. In fact, there was a lady in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her name was Bunny, first name. She spent, I think, about $2 million to take his videographer who was pregnant to California, and perhaps out of sight, out of mind, because, all politicians do that. Or it could have been Martha Stewart. I'm the smartest woman in the room. I can lie my way out of this one. Not so fast, Martha. Ethical lapses do not start big. You'll notice on the screen it says emotional trigger points. Now, I want to be really, really practical here. Ethical lapses are not something that consciously we sit back and say, I am going to do something unethical. Ethical lapses typically happen in the subconscious arena of our psyche, of our beingness, And they bubble up mostly because there's some form of emotional imbalance. I don't mean we're crazy. I just mean there's a challenge that takes place in life. And by the way, as we go through these challenges, I want to just make it really practical for a second. As we go through them at the end, you will see that today we are in the trifecta of these challenges. But let's take a look at it for just a second, because an emotional trigger kind of is, am I going to do this or I don't do this? It's a do or a don't, so to speak. And I'm going to be the first to say this so that we're crystal clear. I am not like a brain scientist, but I want to give you a little brain science, because this brain science is going to help frame this next part of our discussion. Okay, so here's how it works. As a human being, everybody that's on this call, okay, we're here today, we're making the choice to be here to watch this little square box with this little crazy guy on there carrying on this conversation that's somewhat one-way, although thank you for your participation, and we'll do some more here in a moment. But think about this with me for just a second. Here we are in the little box, right? We are here by choice. Rational thought takes place right here in the frontal lobe of our brain. So if we're sitting here and everything in life is generally going okay, there's nothing major or weird taking place, then this is where ethical choice takes place. This is where rational thought takes place. But as soon as something triggers us, as soon as there is an emotional trigger, fight or flight, so to speak, then we instantly move from frontal lobe to lizard brain. Or basically, the blood flow from the frontal cortex of our brain immediately goes back here, and we do lizard brain, which is fight or flight. We're going to make a decision, and we're not rational in making it. Now, let me give you a quick, simple example. There's a good friend of mine. His name is Rick. Rick and his family created a really, really cool animal adventure show called Scaly Adventures. In fact, Rick's son, Pierce, at one time was the youngest animal adventure TV star on the planet. And their program, created in the Greenville, South Carolina area, literally was broadcast on 6 continents. That's really cool stuff. But Rick is a professional speaker, and he does some amazing work on overcoming fear. So one day he's at a program in Charlotte, and I happened to be there with him. And he said, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about overcoming fear. And so here he is, and he's captivating. He told the audience, by the way, he said, listen, when we're finished the program today, I just want to let you know I brought peaches for everyone. And they were like, oh my goodness, how totally nice is that? You brought us peaches. That's crazy. Never had anybody do that. So Rick goes into the program. Here he is. He's doing the program. He's going through the process. Everything is going just fine. He finishes it up, and by the time he finished, man, those people they were fired up. They were like, oh my goodness, if Tony Robbins had fire walk here, we could walk the fire. We can overcome everything. I mean, we got it, Rick. This overcoming fear, this was amazing. And then he said, y'all, before we leave though, I just want to get your peaches. And he reaches under the table, and there's I don't know, I call it Tupperware, a Tupperware container, plastic container about yay tall. It's one of those things you put like wrapping paper or something in and slide under the bed. It gives you a place to store things. And he brings that out, and inside that Tupperware container is peaches, the 16-foot albino boa constrictor. And that's a monster snake. And he picks that thing up and sets it on his shoulders and spreads his arms out, and there's peaches. Y'all, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Folk in the back of the room, as soon as he pulled that snake out, just bolted for the door. I mean, bolted for the door. Now, Rick did that to prove a point. As much as everybody in the room thought they were overcoming fear and they could walk on fire and it was not going to be a problem, as soon as he confronted them, now keep in mind they were in the back of the room. If Peaches was hungry, Peaches could eat the people on the front of the room. The folks in the back are as safe as you'll ever be. By the way, Peaches had been fed, that was not an issue, but nonetheless you get the idea. But he illustrated to them that when something happens that triggers you, you are not emotionally in control of your autonomic response system. And that's typically what gets us in trouble whenever we make unethical choices. So, what are the 3 emotional triggers? There are 3 primary reasons people have lapses within the organization. So let's look at the first one. First one is financial. Now, financial. All right, let's think about it. The easiest one is go back to 2008, right? At the Great Recession. But go back to 2008 and what happened? Lots of people around the country had lost their jobs. People found out their houses were underwater. I don't mean literally underwater, I mean underwater figuratively, in that there was too much debt on the house. The house was foreclosed. There were lots of people that had short sales. People were not able to get credit. Therefore, the market started to dry up. The stock market went and it tanked. And people were like, whoa, this is crazy. And it was tough times, and I don't think anybody escaped at least knowing people that were challenged during these times. Okay, let's look past financial. The next problem could be a relationship problem. Okay? And in a relationship problem, okay, listen, time out. We're all in relationship. We're all in relationship with each other because we're on this meeting together. We're in relationship with each other at our places of employment. We're in relationship with each other because of our family and our connection with our spouse, our children, grandchildren, etc. So there's always going to be a time, at some point in time, when the relationship is going to be challenged. The relationship is challenged. That could create a problem. That would cause me to move from rational thought to irrational choice. Or we could go to the third option, health issues. Now again, you can tell by the color of my hair, I've been on the planet for a little while, and let's just be really honest with each other. The longer we're on this planet, the greater probability is at some point in time we are going to face a health issue. Those emotional trigger points are the things that create challenges in life. And the story I told you about Rick at the beginning is the same thing that we would end with, which is when something happens from an emotional perspective that you are unprepared for, you don't know when you will shift from rational thought to lizard brain. Now, one of the questions that comes up often is the question of what causes an otherwise honest person to do dishonest things. Now, I shared with you at the very opening that in many of my live presentations, I walk in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, which is disturbing sometimes to the people who are participants, but I believe in transparency because there are really 3 components of an ethical lapse. And this is one of those things. If you're in the management arena, you want to look at this. You want to be aware of it. You want to know what's taking place. If you are an employee or participant in an organization, you want to know what are those things that could take place that would allow me, someone who would never do something wrong, to make that first choice that could take me down a very quick and steep, slippery slope. So, let's look at it this way. 3 components of an ethical lapse. Now, I'm going to go back to 1987. It collapsed in 1990, but I'm going to go back to 1987. And here's what happened. 1987, January, in fact, of 1987, I get a call from my local banker, David. David calls me and he says, Chuck, he says, it looks like you're 2 months behind in your house payment. Is there a problem? I was 2 months behind in my house payment. In fact, here's the way I would put this. I was overextended and underfunded. What does that mean? That means I had too much debt. Overextended, underfunded, too much debt. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul. I was having problems paying all of my bills. Our first son was born November 30, 1986. So as you can imagine, December we have his first Christmas. It's his birthday at the end of November, and we had planned everything, and spending was out of control, and I failed to make my house payment. I assumed that, well, I probably could get by with it. I certainly will catch it up. But on that day, unexpectedly, not something I anticipated, the banker calls and, are you 2 months behind in your house payment? By the way, this is the banker that really liked me. We went to Sunday school together. We were in the same church. We knew each other. We were kind of chicken-eating buddies with each other's family, and he sent me lots of business, which is really cool, unless you can't manage your own money. So here's what happens. Remember I talked about your frontal cortex and lizard brain. Well, frontal cortex, whenever he said, you're 2 months behind in your house payment, is there a problem? It immediately went blood drain to lizard brain, and I'm like, holy smokes. If I admit that I can't manage my own financial affairs, and I'm tax partner in a CPA firm, and he sends me lots of business, he's going to think to himself, well, if he can't manage his financial affairs, why am I sending him business? Because I want to send business to people that can manage their financial affairs. So as I'm sitting there thinking about it, gosh, I can't admit to him that I can't manage those affairs, because if he didn't send me business, that means I'd have less business, and less business means less revenue, and if I can't pay my bills right now, I certainly don't need less revenue. Gosh, what am I going to do? That's what going from rational thought to lizard brain is. So I immediately said, David, are you sure the payment has not been misapplied? Now in 1987, I could get by with that. Some of y'all remember, 1987, computers, floppy drives, no internet, different world. I regret what I did in 1987, which I'm getting ready to share with you, and not buying Apple stock in Microsoft, because if I was, I could have my own private jet today. But that's a different issue. Are you sure that payment hasn't been misapplied? His response, well, Chuck, I don't think so, but let me check. I'll get back with you after lunch. Okay, that'll be great, David. We hung up the telephone. Now, here's what happened. One, we've got a three-legged stool. Now notice with a three-legged stool, you cannot stand on the stool unless all three legs are in place. So the first leg of that three-legged stool was the need leg. What do I mean by that? I needed money. $2,000 to be exact. My house payment was $1,000 a month. By the way, $1,000 a month house payment in 1987 is a big house payment. So I needed $2,000. There was need. Oh, whew. I got him off the telephone, thank goodness. Now what I need to do is, since I've got him off the telephone, I need to find an opportunity to solve this problem. Because see, I need to come up with $2,000. I need to come up with $2,000 real quick. What am I going to do? Ooh, I know. I could borrow it from my partners. I mean, after all, I was tax partner in the CPA firm. At the end of tax season, some 3.5 months later, 4 months, we're going to get a big old juicy bonus. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, a big old juicy bonus. So, you know, if that circumstance is what it is, why can't I just go ahead and borrow $2,000 against what would have been a $50,000 or $60,000 bonus then? That's a great idea. Oh gosh, but time out. I forgot, my partners were on an audit in Western North Carolina. This was a Friday. They weren't going to be back until probably 6:30, 7 o'clock p.m., which means the people that signed the checks could not write a check and sign it and give it to me so that I could satisfy that problem at the bank. Well, that's not going to work. What about, I know, Mama? My mother, sweet lady, lived in Maryland. I could have called Mom and said, Mom, can I borrow $2,000? What do you think Mama would have said? Yes, my lovely son. Okay, I'm adding a little something to that. By the way, one of the last live presentations I did in 2019, a whole group of people out there, and I found a really pleasant lady out in the audience, and I went up to her and I said, if you were Mom, and I said, I need to borrow $2,000, what would you say? And I thought I'd found the perfect person. She looked at me, she said, I've been on Social Security for 8 years, you ain't giving me a damn thing, why should I give you any money? And everybody cracked up in the audience that was out there, and it was like, okay, note to self, find somebody that looks cooperative that's not going to give you that kind of answer. But the truth of the matter was, if I had talked to Mom, what would have happened? Well, even if she was willing to loan the money, I needed it in an hour. In an hour. We didn't have PayPal. We didn't have the ability to take a picture of a check and instantly deposit it. We didn't have those things in 1987, so that wasn't going to work. What can I do? Oh, I've got it. Lizard brain. I am the trustee of a client's trust. What I could do is I could get it from them. Now, here's how this plays, okay? So let me just kind of play this out for just a second. Here I am, and I'm going to be the person that needs the money. I look over to my trustee self, and I say, I need $2,000. My trustee self looks back at me and says, this is highly irregular and unusual. Well, that's true, but I needed the money. So I said, here's what I'll do. Now keep in mind, I'm having this conversation with myself. I'm a Gemini, we're supposed to be the twins. That's an easy thing to do. I talk to myself all the time. Probably some of you already recognize that. But what am I going to do? Well, if you'll give me $2,000 today, I will pay you $2,200 at the end of April. That is 4 months. Wow, 10% in 4 months. I'm averaging 6% per year. 10% in 4 months is the equivalent of 30% per year. That is a great return, but this is so highly unusual. Oh, but don't worry, here's what we'll do. I'll type up a note. So I went to the computer, WordPerfect, WordStar. Most anybody that's real young have never heard of those two word processing programs, but WordPerfect, WordStar. I went and I typed, I, Charles Gallagher, being of sound mind and body. Clearly not sound mind, although body might be better than today. I, Charles Gallagher, being of sound mind and body, do hereby blah, 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 and I typed a note and stole the money. Now, people have asked me this question many times. How did you sleep at night? Well, there was a need. I found an opportunity. This is critically important. There's a need. I found an opportunity to sleep at night. I had to rationalize my behavior. And I rationalized theft as a loan. And that afternoon, David at the bank called me. He said, Chuck, I've checked. And before he could finish, I said, David, I am so sorry. I am so embarrassed. I can't believe this. But the circumstance is such that, well, you know, my wife and I, we just had our first child, Rob, at the end of November. And, well, she pays the bills. And she thought in her postpartum period that I was taking care of it. I thought she was continuing to take care of it. Neither one of us did. Now, let me be honest. She did not pay the bills. I did. I was lying through my teeth. But I needed, in my mind, to create something that was plausible. David said to me, he says, well, Chuck, don't worry. He said, I'll share something with you. He said, I passed a bad check once in college. And during that phone call, we had a male bonding moment. Need? I needed $2,000. Opportunity? I could take it from the trust with every intent to pay it back. Rationalization? Well, I'm just borrowing it. And I took the stolen money down to the bank and paid the house payment. And at the end of tax season, sure enough, I paid it back. $2,200. I did what I said. Now, let me just say this because I want to really make this crystal clear. This is really, really, really important. Three-legged stool you can't stand on unless you have all three legs in. If all you do is screw the need leg in, you can't stand on the stool. If you have need and opportunity, you can't stand on the stool. But if you can put the rationalization leg in, you can stand on that stool. Rationalization's like wet cement. It's kind of what holds it all together. So I stole the money, found the opportunity, rationalized it, and at the end of tax season, I paid it back. Now, all of a sudden, the cement was getting harder. You see, this foundation I created, yeah, it's solid. So I did it again. And I paid it back. Now, this wet cement has rebar in it, and it is powerful. You see, if I do something once and I get by with it, I might do it again. And if I get by with it, there's a fair chance I'll continue to do that. Now, let me stop for just a second, because some of you would say, well, I would never do that. I can't believe that. No, you speed. You get on the highway whenever the law says this is what it is. This is what you're supposed to do. You get on that highway and you speed, because the rationalization is, if I don't get caught, I probably won't get caught. And because everybody does it, it must be okay. And therefore, under 9 you're fine, over 9 you're mine. So says the highway patrol, which is not really true. So that's how this plays. So how can a person rationalize violating a code of ethics? Think about that for just a second. How can a person rationalize violating a code of ethics? And it really is kind of simple. Let's look at what I've got coming into the screen. Number one, if I can rationalize behavior, that I find an opportunity that allows me to solve a need, what do I magically have? Everything is perfectly in balance. Now, let me say this just so we're crystal clear. Everything that we've talked about relates to our behavior each and every day. Okay? So let's just so we're all okay and on the same page. I decided 2 years ago at this point that I needed to lose weight. So I did the keto kind of diet, Atkins, whatever you want to call it, which I thought was wonderful. Meat and fat and veggies, I was a happy camper. No carbs or low carbs. And ended up losing 35 pounds. But then as time goes on, what happens? You sit back and you say, well, need, opportunity, and rationalization. Gosh, I've got to catch a flight up to Indianapolis, and I have to grab something to eat. Well, what are you going to eat at the airport that is no carb or low carb? Just this past week, I had my first flight since March. And going through the airport in Orlando, Florida, which was like a ghost town, the only eating establishment open was Dunkin' Donuts. So my choice was, I could eat nothing and be fairly hungry, or I could grab a donut and some orange juice, which is nothing but carbs, but satisfies the hunger. Need, I'm hungry. Opportunity, ain't nothing but Dunkin' Donuts here in Orlando. Rationalization, well, one donut and some orange juice is probably not going to dramatically impact my diet. But if I do it once, and twice, and 3 times, and nothing amazing happens quickly, there's a chance I will go off the diet and revert back to adding pounds. Now, let's put these circles back in different perspectives. If my relationships, if my health, if my financial well-being is all intact, if all of that is equally intact, if I know that I've got a job, I go home to my loving wife and the doctor's given me wonderful clearance for my health, if all of that were true, I probably will make great choices. But as soon as the need circle blows up and gets out of balance, what happens? When all of a sudden it gets out of balance, there is more space within which to rationalize poor behavior and more space within which you find opportunities to rationalize poor behavior, unethical behavior, behavior that doesn't get the results that you truly want. That's what I call going to lizard brain. See, I can talk to you all day, but when it comes down to it, you have to be the one to put value behind the concept of making positive, ethical choices. You see, before I took those 23 steps, I thought I made good choices. But after I became 11-6-42-058, I found out something. And that is every choice has a consequence. And before I took those 23 steps, well, I lived life a bit as an illusion. That's the easiest way to put it. I mean, there were a lot of positive things that I did. But it was a little bit like living a life of David Copperfield. There was some stuff that was real and there was some stuff that was magic. It was illusion. But after I became 11-6-42-058, I found out something, and that is the truth will always come out. No matter what happens, no matter how slick you are, no matter how smart a Martha Stewart person you are, the fact is the truth always comes out. And sometimes it comes out in ways that you never would have anticipated. And lastly, before I took those 23 steps, I thought I was successful. Success was defined by the house, the car, the clothes, the watch, etc., etc., etc. The bling, some people would call it. But after I became 11-6-42-058, I found out something, and that is success really doesn't have anything to do with that. True success is making a positive impact on the lives of other people. I hope that this program has changed some perspectives, opened some doors, altered some thinking, and expanded your mind. And I hope that you recognize that really every day, with what you do personally and professionally, that you have the potential to positively impact the lives of other people. Ladies and gentlemen, I started with a statement, and I'm going to end with the same statement. Every choice has a consequence. God bless.